knocked at the door and said, "Let me in, dear sister." Then the door was opened, and stepping in the King saw a maiden more beautiful than he had ever before seen. She was frightened when she saw not her fawn, but a man stepped in who had a golden crown upon his head. But the King, looking at her with a friendly glance, reached her his hand, saying, "Will you go with me to my castle and be my dear wife?" "Oh, yes," replied the maiden, "but the fawn must go too. Him I will never forsake." The King replied, "He shall remain with you as long as you live, and shall want for nothing." In the meantime the fawn had come in, and the sister, binding the girdle to him, again took it in her hand, and led him away with her out of the hut. The King took the beautiful maiden upon his horse, and rode to his castle, where the wedding was celebrated with great splendor, and she became queen, and they lived together a long time, while the fawn was taken care of and lived well, playing about the castle garden. The wicked stepmother, however, on whose account the children had wandered forth into the world, supposed that long ago the sister had been torn in pieces by the wild beasts, and the little brother hunted to death in his fawn's shape by the hunters. As soon, therefore, as she heard how happy they had become, and how everything prospered with them, envy and jealousy were roused in her heart and left her no peace, and she was always thinking in what way she could work misfortune to them. Her own daughter, who was as ugly as night and had but one eye, for which she was continually reproached, said, "The luck of being a queen has never yet happened to me." "Be quiet now," said the old woman, "and make yourself contented. When the time comes, I shall be at hand." As soon, then, as the time came when the Queen brought into the world a beautiful little boy, which happened when the King was out hunting, the old witch took the form of a chambermaid, and got into the room where the Queen was lying, and said to her, "The bath is ready which will restore you and give you fresh strength. Be quick, before it gets cold." Her daughter being at hand, they carried the weak Queen between them into the room, and laid her in the bath, and then, shutting the door, they ran off. But first they had made an immense fire in the stove, which must soon suffocate the young Queen. When this was done, the old woman took her daughter, and putting a cap on her, laid her in the bed in the Queen's place. She gave her, too, the form and appearance of the real Queen as far as she could, but she could not restore the lost eye, and so that the King might not notice it, she turned upon that side where there was no eye. When he came home at evening and heard that a son was born to him, he was much delighted, and prepared to go to his wife's bedside to see how she did. So the old woman called out in a great hurry, "For your life, do not undraw the curtains. The Queen must not yet see the light, and must be kept quiet." So the King went away, and did not discover that a false Queen was laid in the bed. When midnight came and every one was asleep, the nurse, who sat by herself, wide awake near the cradle in the nursery, saw the door open and the true Queen come in. She took the child in her arms and rocked it awhile, and then, shaking up its pillow, laid it down in its cradle and covered it over again. She did not forget the fawn either, but going to the corner where he was, stroked his back, and then went silently out at the door. The nurse asked in the morning of the guards if anyone had passed into the castle during the night, but they answered, "No, we have seen nobody." For many nights afterwards she came constantly, and never spoke a word, and the nurse saw her always, but she would not trust herself to speak about it to anyone. When some time had passed away, the Queen one night began to speak, and said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? Twice more will I come, but never again." The nurse made no reply, but, when she had disappeared, went to the King and told him all. The King exclaimed, "Oh, heavens! What does this mean? The next night I will watch myself by the child." In the evening he went into the nursery, and about midnight the Queen appeared and said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? Once more will I come, but never again." And she nursed the child as she was used to, and then disappeared. The King dared not speak, but he watched the following night, and this time she said, "How fares my child? How fares my fawn? This time have I come, but never again." At these words the King could hold back no longer, but sprang up and said, "You can be no other than my dear wife." Then she answered, "Yes, I am your dear wife." And at that moment her life was restored by God's mercy, and she was again as beautiful and charming as ever. She told the King the fraud which the witch and her daughter had practised upon him, and he had them both tried and sentence pronounced against them. The daughter was taken into the forest, where the wild beasts tore her in pieces, but the old witch was led to the fire and miserably burned. And as soon as she was reduced to ashes, the little fawn was unbewitched, and received again his human form, and the brother and sister lived happily together to the end of their days. End of The Little Brother and Sister.